In this video, I'd like to talk about how to graph the equation of a line when it's given in slope-intercept form. So we're given this example, y is equal to 2x minus 3. And just as a reminder, let's first discuss what slope-intercept form is. So let me just write that down. So slope-intercept form is a form for these linear equations where we have both the slope and the y-intercept within the equation. And in general, you'll see it as y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope. So the number multiplied by x is the slope, or the coefficient on x. And this letter b here, b is the y-intercept. So b, whatever that number is, that's where our line crosses this y-axis here. Because think about it, if you put in x equals 0, then this term goes away and you're just left with y equals b. So x equals 0 is going to be on this line here. So we have both the slope and the y-intercept, and notice this is when the equation is solved for y. So if you ever solve a linear equation for y, then that would set it equal to the slope-intercept form, and immediately you can figure out what the slope and the y-intercept are. So with that in mind, let's look at our specific example. We have y equals 2x minus 3, and we just have to match this up to the form to figure out what our slope is and what our y-intercept is. So our slope is always the number attached to x. It's the coefficient on x. So in this case, it's 2. So m is 2, but I like to write it as a fraction. So if you're given the slope as a whole number, I would recommend putting it over 1, because you can divide anything by 1 without changing the number. And the reason for this is that the definition for slope is a fraction. The slope, remember, is defined as the rise divided by the run. So when we write it as a fraction, we can match it up to the rise and the run. So from one point to the next, we rise 2 and we run 1. And remember, the rise is just how much it goes up and down, and the run is how much it goes left and right. So we know our slope, and we also know our y-intercept, because that's just b. So whatever this number is at the end, this constant, that's going to be your b value. So in our case, b would be negative 3. And remember, this is our y-intercept. This is where it crosses this y-axis. Because think about it, if you plug in x equals 0, if you plug that in here, you get 2 times 0. So this term just goes away and y is equal to minus 3. So that's why whatever this number is that you're adding or subtracting at the end, that's always your y-intercept, because you always plug in 0 for x to find where it crosses this line. And when you plug in 0 here, this just goes away. So you get whatever this number is at the end of the equation. So we know the y-intercept is at negative 3, because when we plug in x equals 0, we get back negative 3. And that's what we're going to start with first. So the general strategy for this, let me make a little bit of room, and let's write it out. So the strategy, so for number 1, plot the y-intercept first. So we're going to plot that. So 0 minus 3, so that's right here. And now step number 2, use slope to find a second point. And we'll do that using our rise over run concept. So we're at this 0 minus 3, and we know our slope is 2 over 1. So that means we go up 2 over 1, because they're both positive. If it was a negative slope, that would just tell us we're going down 2. But since it's positive, that means we go up 2. So 1, 2 right here, and then the run is 1. And for the run, you're always going to the right. So if our slope is negative, I personally just attach the negative sign to the rise. So if it's negative, that just tells me I go down and to the right rather than up and to the right. So in this strategy, you're always going to the right for run, but your rise can be up or down depending if it's positive or negative. So our rise is 2, we go up 1, 2, and then our run is 1 to the right, so that ends up right here. And so that'll be a point on our line. And at this point, you're pretty much done. You just have to connect these with a line, since you only need 2 points when you actually graph a line. And so if you want, though, you can continue finding more points, just filling it in nicely. Maybe it makes it a cleaner drawing. But from here, you can again go up 1, 2, and then over 1, up 1, 2, over 1. And you can see these all line up to over 1, or at least roughly. And at this point, we'll just connect them with a line. And this line right here is the geometric representation of this equation y equals 2x minus 3. So let's do another one, but we're going to keep this strategy. Figure out what the slope is, what the y-intercept is. Once you figure these out, then you plot the y-intercept and then use the slope to figure out a second point. Once you figure out a second point, connect them with a line.